Yes, I'm glad you made it back. Welcome to the channel. And here's the thing. Creating value. You got to get good at it because you're selling your services. We need to create value. We need to sell the value. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. And I think most salespeople think that the value exists inside the product. It's not true. You spend your entire careers memorizing features, benefits, and product knowledge. But the best salespeople understand something different is that value is never found. Value is created. The prospect does not discover value. The prospect constructs value inside their own mind. It's going on every time inside of your sales conversation. Your job as a salesperson is not to explain your product. Your job is to influence how the prospect evaluates reality, because every buying decision is ultimately a psychological calculation, right? The prospect is asking, hey, if I buy this, will my future be better if I do this? Everything else is just noise within that. So grab a pencil and paper. Let's jump into lesson one. Remember, everything I teach you have to buy a sales program for thousands of dollars. I'm going to teach you it for free. Value is the distance between two realities. That's the title of lesson one. Write it down. The first rule of value creation is that people do not buy products. People buy movement. Every sale exists because there's something going on. There's a gap, right? There's current reality and then there's the desired reality. So the larger the gap, the greater the perceived value. And most salespeople immediately begin presenting, where elite salespeople begin expanding the gap. They force prospects to fully examine where they are and then fully visualize where they want to be. So if you can get good at that, watch out, right? So look, the prospect making $50,000 who wants $250,000 feels value. The prospect stuck at 10 clients who wants 100 clients, they feel value. The prospect overwhelmed by bookkeeping who wants freedom feels value. So without a gap, there's no value. Without tension, there's no movement. So some word pop questions I'm going to give you right here, and you need to implement them and throw them into your presentation would be, where are you today? Where do you want to be? Why aren't you there already? What is this costing you? How long has this been happening? What happens if nothing changes? Those questions create value, not the presentation. All right, lesson two, write this down. The law of magnification, right? The law of magnification. Human beings act on what they focus on, right? Whatever receives attention expands psychologically. So salespeople who are really, really good understand this principle. Most prospects minimize their problems, and your job is to magnify the consequences, right? Not exaggerate them, but magnify them. And those are two completely different things, right? Most salespeople say, well, John, you should probably fix this. Well, and that's not good. The best salespeople say, hey, let's calculate. Let's calculate what this is actually costing you. Now the prospect starts thinking, the brain begins processing losses, missed opportunities, lost revenue, lost time, lost confidence, lost momentum. Value begins increasing automatically. All right, let's go to lesson three. I call it the opportunity cost framework, and you need to put it down and write it. Most salespeople discuss price. You do this often when you're going over your services and pretty early on in that conversation, which is insane, right? Well, you have to, instead of price, I'd rather discuss opportunity cost. So that's how you need to think, because price is visible. Opportunity cost is invisible, right? And invisible costs are usually larger. Let me give you an example. Okay, so like if a prospect hesitates over a $5,000 investment, average salesperson is going to defend that price, where an elite salesperson will calculate the delay of not doing it. So let me show you. Let's say the solution could create $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 per year. Now the prospect isn't evaluating, can I afford $5,000? What they're doing is, can I afford another year of delay? So something that I always express to people is, all you have to do is ask them, calculate how much your services can save them or make them, times it by 12, and ask them if they're comfortable with leaving X amount on the table. Well, a lot of times the answer is no, right? And that right there is going to get them right back into the game. Now you're back into the game. You can talk about how your services can solve their problems. All right, lesson 4, future self-engineering. This is one of the highest skills in sales, right? Future self-engineering. Let me teach you how to do this. Human beings make decisions based on their future identity, not present reality. So what's happening is the prospect is constantly asking themselves, well, like, who am I becoming? Every purchase is an identity vote. Think about it. The entrepreneur buys confidence, the accountant buys professionalism, the business owner buys growth, the executive buys status, the parents buy security. The product is rarely the true purchase. It's the identity. The identity is what they're buying. Elite salespeople help prospects meet their future self before they ever buy. So let me show you how to do it. John, if everything worked exactly how you hoped, who would you become 3 years from now? Well, if you don't ask it, you won't get the results I get. That question changes lives, right? Because now the prospect sees a future version of themselves, and once someone sees that version of themselves, they start moving towards it. They start making decisions that person would make. So if you can get good at that, you're going to really increase your sales. All right, let's go to lesson 5. Certainty creation. So sales, the more clarity I have, the more certainty I have, the more inclined that prospect's going to be to close that deal. Or buy my services. So most objections actually aren't objections, okay? And I cover this a lot. It's uncertainty. They're just unsure. So whatever they're saying, it's a lie. It's not real. They're just saying stupid stuff to get off the phone with you. They're just unsure, and they don't know how to ask good questions. And you shouldn't give people a lot of credit. You should just talk to them like they're 2 years old, and you should figure out what's wrong and what's going on. I don't know how else to say it, because for whatever reason, people don't know how to talk. So these are the business, and yes, they're the business owners you're working with. They don't know how to ask good questions, so you have to help them out. So most objections are not objections. They're uncertainty. I want you to think about it. So when someone says, I need to think about it, I need more time, I'm not sure, I need to discuss it, all of that translates over to I lack certainty. So the prospect is actually uncertain about the outcome, the timing, the investment, the process, their own ability. Your role is to remove that uncertainty. Every story, every testimonial, even case studies, every proof point, every demonstration, it exists for one purpose. And that's to increase certainty. And certainty is what creates value. All right, lesson 6. Write it down. The psychology of time compression. So with this, in the psychology of time compression, the brain discounts distant rewards. Okay, write it down. The brain discounts distant rewards. And what does that even mean? Behavioral economists call this temporal discounting. A reward today feels more valuable than the same reward 5 years from now, right? So salespeople leverage this constantly. They're not selling information, they sell acceleration. You have to realize these people are buying speed, they're buying shortcuts, they buy mentorship, systems, roadmaps. Well, why? Because all those things compress time. So the shorter the path, the greater the value. That's how you have to look at it, right? All right, let's go to lesson 7. Status economics, right? Write it down. Status economics. So most salespeople never discuss status, right? And that's a big problem. Elite salespeople understand it drives almost everything. They buy things that increase who they believe they are. That's just how it works, right? So throughout human history, status created influence, resources, opportunity, leadership, security. Our brains still operate through those mechanisms, right? The prospect may never say it, but they're asking, will this elevate me? Will this improve how I see myself? Will this improve how others see me? So status is not vanity, it's just human psychology. And status dramatically increases perceived value. So you have to figure out who you're talking to and how they perceive themselves, and then you have to speak to how they perceive themselves. It's the simplest way to explain it. All right, lesson 8, the transformation framework, right? So with the transformation framework, you have to understand that products create outcomes, okay? Outcomes create transformation. Well, transformation then creates value. So most salespeople sell products. Well, good salespeople sell outcomes. But if you want to close most of the people you speak to, you have to sell the transformation of using the item. So you have to think of a treadmill, for example. People don't buy the treadmill because it's fancy and it looks cool. I can run on a mountain. Wow, this is so exciting. No, they're buying what they're going to look like in 6 months. So a person selling a treadmill would sell a six-pack. They would sell a skinny body. So you have to think in the same outlier, if that makes any sense. So selling the transformation. You're not selling bookkeeping, financial control, not tax preparation. You're not selling bookkeeping, you're selling financial control. It's not tax preparation, it's financial confidence. They're not selling advisory, they're selling business growth. So you wouldn't say, well, I'm a CFO or I'm a CPA and I offer these services. What you would focus on is I'm a person who helps business owners grow their business. And then that's what the business owner is looking for, right? All right, so it's identity expansion. That's what you have to realize. So it's not sales training, it's identity expansion. Well, I'm a salesperson, so I want to increase my salesmanship. So then you would buy a sales program. So the larger the transformation, the larger the perceived value. And all of this is going on within just your conversation with them. All right, lesson 9. The principle of inevitability, right? Lesson 9, the principle of inevitability. This is the highest level of value creation, right? The prospect stops asking, will this work? And what happens is they start asking, how quickly can I start? And that shift right there is everything. The future becomes believable. The outcome becomes realistic. The path becomes clear. The risk becomes manageable. The opportunity becomes obvious. So at that moment, the sale is no longer about price. The sale is no longer about features. The sale is no longer about information. The sale actually becomes about action. And they'll start moving towards, hey, I'm ready to get started. Let's do this. What do I need to do? Can you send over the paperwork? So let me leave you with this. And make sure you're writing this down. Okay? This will conclude this lesson. The value creation formula. All right? The value creation formula. So elite salespeople systematically increase this within one conversation. Future reward. Write that down. So the future reward, that's got to be top of mind. Then I have to have identity expansion. Okay, they have to have some sort of status gain within this buy. Not because they're vain, because they're human. Okay? So they all think the same. Certainty, speed, probability of success, while simultaneously increasing awareness of their current pain, opportunity cost, delay, the future regret, the risk of inaction. So notice how none of this stuff was about the product or the service, which is what most salespeople talk about, right? So instead of, you have to engineer the value. I can't express that enough. You, through questions, have to engineer the value. They understand that value is not a characteristic of the offer. Value is a psychological calculation occurring inside the prospect's mind. So the salesperson who learns how to influence that calculation will never compete on price again. It's not about price. Your guys' prices are all the same. They're all this. You're all about $100 off from one another, right? So it's about explaining the value of using your services, right? So the highest paid salespeople in the world, they're not selling products. They sell a future that feels too valuable to ignore. It's like, if I can just make it simple and clear and common sense oriented, and it's going to solve whatever they're currently experiencing, well, then they'll probably buy it. So instead of letting them know what you have, why don't just speak to the outcome of it, and you'll get way more money. All right, I'll see you in the next one.